Did you ever wonder how the kitchen gadgets your family trusted could end up being illegal now? In the 1970s, these kitchen gadgets shaped daily routines so completely that no one imagined they could be dangerous. And if the tools we cooked with carried dangers we never saw coming, what else was hiding in our own kitchens? Lead-glazed ceramic crockpots were the crown jewels of 1970s kitchens, sitting proudly on countertops with their earthy brown tones and hand-painted floral patterns that made every slow-cooked meal feel like a labor of love. Families trusted these heavy stoneware pots completely, filling them with stews and roasts that simmered for hours, while the house filled with comforting aromas. The glazes that made these pots so beautiful were often mixed with lead compounds that gave them their rich, glossy finish, and nobody questioned what might be seeping into the food during those long cooking sessions. Mothers stirred soups, tasted broths straight from the pot, and served meals to children who had no idea that the glaze making everything look so appetizing was slowly contaminating every bite. It took years before researchers connected decorative cookware to elevated lead levels in families who used them regularly. When the bans finally arrived, people were stunned to learn that something so wholesome had been quietly poisoning dinners for years. Those beautiful pots now sit in antique shops as reminders of a time when nobody thought twice about what their cookware might be hiding. Aluminum pressure cookers without safety valves were the time-saving heroes of busy 1970s households, promising to turn tough cuts of meat into tender masterpieces in a fraction of the usual time. Families gathered around these hissing, steaming pots with a mixture of excitement and anticipation, watching the pressure gauge climb while dinner transformed inside. The problem was that early models had no reliable way to release excess pressure when things went wrong. One moment you had a pot roast cooking peacefully, and the next moment the lid could launch toward the ceiling with enough force to dent plaster or worse. Kitchens across America experienced explosions that sent scalding food and metal fragments flying in every direction, leaving burns and injuries in their wake. Parents who had proudly shown off their modern cooking technology suddenly found themselves explaining to emergency room doctors how dinner ended up embedded in the walls. When safety standards finally caught up, regulators demanded multiple release mechanisms that made the older models illegal to sell. Those unregulated cookers became cautionary tales about speed and convenience coming at the cost of basic protection. Teflon-coated pans with PFOA felt like pure kitchen magic when they first appeared in 1970s homes, promising that eggs would slide effortlessly and cleanup would take seconds instead of endless scrubbing. Families marveled at how nothing stuck to these miracle surfaces, tossing away their old cast iron in favor of something that seemed too good to be true. And in many ways, it was. The chemical compound that made these pans so slick released toxic fumes when the coating overheated, which happened more easily than most cooks realized. Birds in kitchens died suddenly from the invisible gases, and people reported flu-like symptoms after cooking sessions that pushed these pans past their limits. Nobody thought to question why a cooking surface could kill a parakeet nearby, because the convenience was simply too appealing to resist. It took decades before researchers understood how these forever chemicals accumulated in the body and refused to break down. When regulators finally stepped in, the original formulations were banned. But the memory of those early pans lingers uncomfortably for anyone who spent years breathing in fumes they never knew existed. Cadmium-colored enamelware brought a burst of sunshine into 1970s kitchens with its vibrant oranges, fiery reds, and cheerful yellows that made even the simplest cooking tasks feel festive. These bright pots and pans looked stunning hanging from pot racks or sitting on stovetops, their glossy surfaces catching the light and adding warmth to every meal. Families used them daily for boiling pasta, simmering sauces, and warming soups, never imagining that the pigments creating those beautiful colors contained cadmium, a heavy metal with serious health consequences. Every time acidic foods like tomatoes touched these surfaces, tiny amounts of cadmium leached into whatever was being cooked. Children ate from bowls filled with contaminated stews, while parents proudly showed off their colorful kitchen collections. Researchers eventually discovered that cadmium exposure could damage kidneys, weaken bones, and accumulate dangerously over time. The bans arrived swiftly once the evidence became clear, forcing families to discard cookware they had treasured for years. Those cheerful orange pots serve as reminders that the brightest things in our kitchens sometimes carried the darkest secrets. Asbestos trivets and pot holders were considered the ultimate in kitchen safety during the 1970s, promising to protect countertops and hands from even the hottest pans fresh off the stove. Families stacked them in drawers, hung them beside ovens, and used them daily without giving a single thought to what made these items so remarkably heat-resistant. The answer was asbestos, a mineral fiber that could withstand extreme temperatures but also released microscopic particles into the air with every use. Each time someone grabbed a pot holder to lift a casserole or slid a trivet under a sizzling skillet, invisible fibers drifted through the kitchen into the lungs of everyone nearby. Children did homework at kitchen tables while parents cooked dinner inches away from materials now known to cause devastating respiratory diseases. The tragedy is that asbestos felt so safe, so perfectly suited for its purpose that questioning it seemed absurd. When the truth emerged and bans swept through households, people were horrified to realize they had been protecting their hands while slowly harming their lungs. Those trivets became symbols of how easily danger can disguise itself as convenience. Mercury meat thermometers were the trusted companions of every serious home cook in the 1970s, their slender glass tubes and silver liquid columns promising perfectly roasted turkeys and safely cooked roasts. Families inserted them into holiday birds, Sunday hams, and weeknight chickens, watching the mercury rise with the confidence that came from believing science had made cooking foolproof. What nobody considered was what happened when these fragile instruments broke. A simple bump against a pot lid or a careless toss into a sink could shatter the glass and release mercury droplets that scattered across countertops and floors. This toxic metal did not simply wipe away. It pooled in cracks, evaporated slowly into kitchen air, and clung to surfaces in ways that made complete cleanup nearly impossible. Families unknowingly prepared meals in contaminated kitchens for weeks after accidents they barely noticed. When safer alternatives became available and regulators recognized the residential dangers, mercury thermometers were pulled from store shelves. The precision those silver columns promised came with a price nobody realized they were paying. Lead-soldered copper cookware held a special place in 1970s kitchens, its gleaming reddish surfaces suggesting professional quality and timeless elegance that lesser pots could never match. Home cooks displayed these pieces proudly, believing they had invested in something that would last generations and make every dish taste better. The craftsmanship was undeniable, but hidden in the seams where copper panels joined together was lead solder that made the connection strong and seamless. Every time acidic ingredients like wine, vinegar, or tomatoes simmered in these beautiful pots, lead leached silently into the food. Families served marinara sauce and countless other dishes contaminated with a heavy metal that accumulated in bones and blood over time. Children absorbed the toxin even faster than adults, their growing bodies storing poison with every meal their parents prepared with such care. When researchers finally connected copper cookware to elevated lead levels in households, the bans followed quickly. Those elegant pots, once symbols of culinary sophistication, became warnings about how beauty and craftsmanship can sometimes mask dangers simmering beneath the surface. Formaldehyde-sealed wooden cutting boards were standard equipment in 1970s kitchens, their smooth hardwood surfaces treated with chemicals that promised to prevent warping, cracking, and bacterial growth for years. Families chopped vegetables, sliced bread, and prepared raw meat on these boards daily, trusting that the industrial treatment made them superior to untreated alternatives. What homemakers did not realize was that formaldehyde, a known carcinogen, slowly released from these treated surfaces over time, especially when the wood was scored by repeated knife cuts. Every slice through an onion, every chop through a carrot released tiny amounts of the chemical directly into the food being prepared. The smell was faint, sometimes undetectable, and easily dismissed as the natural scent of wood. Researchers eventually documented how formaldehyde exposure in kitchens contributed to respiratory irritation and long-term health concerns. When regulations tightened and safer sealants became available, the older boards were phased out. But for decades, families had been seasoning their meals with something far more dangerous than salt and pepper. Fiberglass insulated electric skillets were among the most popular plug-in cooking devices of the 1970s, their convenient temperature dials and spacious cooking surfaces making them perfect for everything from pancake breakfasts to one-pan dinners. Families loved that these skillets heated evenly and could be used right at the table, eliminating the need to transfer food from stove to serving dish. The insulation wrapped around the heating elements contained fiberglass, which worked beautifully until the skillet aged or suffered scratches that exposed the material beneath. Once compromised, microscopic glass fibers could work their way into food or drift into the air during cooking sessions. People scraped metal utensils across surfaces without knowing they were releasing particles that irritated lungs and skin on contact. When manufacturers acknowledged the risks and regulators demanded safer alternatives, many families had already used these skillets for a decade or more. The convenient countertop cooking solution had been quietly shedding invisible hazards into Sunday brunches and weeknight dinners all along. PVC plastic food containers revolutionized kitchen storage in the 1970s, their lightweight durability and airtight seals making them seem like the perfect solution for leftovers, lunch packing, and pantry organization. Families stacked them in refrigerators, microwaved them without hesitation, and filled them with everything from spaghetti sauce to birthday cake. But PVC plastic contained phthalates, chemical softeners that made the material flexible, but also leached into food over time. Heat accelerated this process dramatically, so every reheated casserole and every warm soup stored in these containers absorbed compounds now known to disrupt hormones. Children carried lunches to school in containers that slowly released chemicals into their sandwiches. Parents warmed baby food in plastic that transferred toxins with every heated spoonful. When researchers finally connected soft plastic containers to health concerns, regulators banned the most dangerous formulations. The containers that once symbolized modern convenience became cautionary reminders that storing food safely required far more than just a tight-fitting lid. Unshielded microwave ovens were the technological marvels that every 1970s household wanted to own, promising to revolutionize cooking with invisible waves that heated food in minutes instead of hours. Families gathered around these humming metal boxes with a mixture of awe and curiosity, watching through small windows as leftovers spun on turntables. But early models were rushed to market before anyone fully understood how to contain the energy pulsing inside them. Doors sealed poorly, shielding was inconsistent, and radiation leaked through gaps that manufacturers had not yet learned to prevent. People stood inches away, faces pressed close to watch their food rotate, absorbing energy that escaped through faulty seals. Some reported headaches, dizziness, or a strange tingling sensation when standing too close during operation. Pets avoided kitchens where these machines hummed, and houseplants near countertops wilted without explanation. When regulators finally tested the older units, they discovered leakage levels far exceeding what would later be considered safe. The bans and recalls followed quickly, forcing manufacturers to redesign every seal before selling another unit. Electric can openers without blade guards seemed like brilliant inventions when they first appeared in 1970s kitchens, promising to end the struggle of manual cranking and the frustration of jagged lid edges. Families plugged them in beside the toaster and used them daily, marveling at how effortlessly the spinning blades sliced through metal. The problem was that early designs left the cutting mechanism completely exposed, creating a spinning hazard that waited patiently for the slightest mistake. Adults reached to remove stuck lids and found their fingers meeting sharp metal instead. Children who tried to help with kitchen chores discovered that the machine did not distinguish between tin cans and curious hands. Emergency rooms reported a steady stream of deep cuts, some requiring stitches, others leaving permanent scars on fingers that had simply reached in at the wrong moment. Manufacturers eventually redesigned the mechanisms with guards and safety switches, but the original versions had already caused countless injuries. Those early electric openers became reminders that convenience without caution is just another word for danger waiting in the drawer. Hexavalent chromium-plated toasters gleamed on 1970s countertops with a mirror finish so perfect you could check your reflection while waiting for breakfast. These appliances represented the height of kitchen elegance, their shiny surfaces suggesting quality, durability, and sophistication that lesser appliances could not match. What nobody realized was that the chrome plating process used hexavalent chromium, a compound that released toxic fumes when exposed to high heat. Every morning, as bread browned and coils glowed orange, tiny amounts of dangerous compounds drifted into kitchen air. Families breathed them in while pouring coffee, packing lunches, and rushing through breakfast routines that repeated day after day for years. Workers in factories that produced these toasters suffered the most obvious effects, but households absorbed lower doses that accumulated silently. When researchers connected chromium exposure to serious respiratory damage, regulators demanded safer plating methods. The gleaming toasters that once symbolized modern living became cautionary examples of how even the shiniest surfaces can hide invisible threats warming up beside the morning coffee. Benzene-based cabinet cleaners were the heavy-duty heroes of 1970s kitchen maintenance, promising to cut through grease, grime, and years of accumulated cooking residue with a single wipe. Homemakers sprayed them liberally inside cabinets, across countertops, and along stove hoods, filling kitchens with chemical fumes they assumed meant the product was working. The smell was sharp, almost sweet, the kind that made your eyes water slightly if you leaned in too close during scrubbing. Nobody questioned what they were breathing because the results were undeniable and the products were sold everywhere respectable cleaning supplies were stocked. But benzene does not simply evaporate and disappear. It enters the bloodstream through inhalation, accumulating in bone marrow and disrupting the body in ways that only became clear decades later. Families who prided themselves on spotless kitchens were unknowingly filling their homes with a carcinogen now banned from consumer products. The shift happened gradually as safer alternatives emerged, but for years those powerful cleaners had been doing invisible damage with every spray and wipe. Lead crystal juice pitchers were the elegant centerpieces of 1970s breakfast tables, their faceted surfaces catching morning light and turning ordinary orange juice into something that looked almost ceremonial. Families used them for Sunday brunches, holiday gatherings, and everyday meals, believing that beautiful glassware elevated even the simplest breakfast routine. The weight of these pitchers felt substantial and reassuring, a sign of quality that cheaper alternatives could never match. What nobody understood was that lead crystal slowly released its toxic metal into acidic liquids, and fruit juice was about as acidic as kitchen beverages could get. Every pour contaminated the drink with lead that accumulated in bones, blood, and developing brains. Children drank glass after glass of juice their parents believed was healthy, never suspecting the elegant pitcher was quietly undermining every vitamin the orange juice contained. When researchers documented how rapidly lead leached from crystal into acidic drinks, the warnings spread quickly. Those beautiful pitchers now sit unused in cabinets, too dangerous for juice, but too cherished to throw away. Methylene chloride paint stripper sprays were the secret weapons of 1970s kitchen renovations, promising to remove old paint from cabinets, trim, and furniture with minimal effort and maximum results. Homeowners sprayed them in enclosed spaces, watching layers of old paint bubble and peel away like magic, while breathing fumes that seemed like a small price for such impressive efficiency. The chemical worked by dissolving paint on contact, but it also converted to carbon monoxide inside the human body, creating a danger far more immediate than anyone suspected. People collapsed in kitchens and basements without warning, overcome by fumes that acted faster than they could recognize the symptoms. Some never made it to fresh air in time. The tragedies accumulated quietly before anyone connected the pattern to this common renovation product. When regulators finally demanded bans, the evidence was overwhelming and heartbreaking. Those spray cans had turned weekend improvement projects into life-threatening situations, hidden behind labels that never warned how quickly a closed door could become the difference between finishing a project and never walking out. phosphate-loaded dishwasher detergents were the miracle powders that made 1970s dishes sparkle like never before, dissolving grease and eliminating water spots with a chemical efficiency that seemed almost magical. Families poured them into machines without measuring, believing that more powder meant cleaner dishes and brighter glassware. The phosphates inside these detergents softened water and suspended food particles beautifully, but they did not stop working when they drained away. Every wash cycle sent these chemicals flowing through pipes, into sewers, and eventually into lakes, rivers, and streams. Phosphates acted like fertilizer for algae, triggering massive blooms that choked waterways, depleted oxygen, and devastated fish populations across the country. Lakes turned murky green, covered in thick mats of growth that smelled sour and killed everything beneath them. Scientists traced the environmental collapse directly to household detergents used by millions of well-meaning families. When bans finally arrived, many people were shocked to learn that their spotless dishes had contributed to ecological disasters unfolding miles away from their kitchen sinks. Chlordane, ant, and roach sprays were the nuclear options of 1970s pest control, promising to eliminate infestations with a single application that kept working for months after the can was empty. Families sprayed them along baseboards, inside cabinets, and around any crack where insects might enter, filling kitchens with chemical fog they believed would dissipate harmlessly. The product worked exactly as advertised, killing pests on contact and leaving residues that continued killing for years. That persistence was the problem. Chlordane did not break down, did not wash away, and did not stop being toxic just because the insects were gone. It seeped into floors, walls, and the very structure of homes, creating contamination that lingered for decades. Families lived in houses saturated with a pesticide now known to cause serious health effects with prolonged exposure. When regulators finally banned chlordane for residential use, some homes required professional remediation. The sprays that promised clean kitchens had instead left invisible contamination embedded in the places where families cooked and ate. Carbon tetrachloride spot removers were the go-to solution for stubborn kitchen stains in the 1970s, promising to lift grease, wine, and food splashes from countertops and floors with remarkable ease. Homemakers kept bottles under sinks and used them liberally whenever spills threatened to become permanent reminders of cooking accidents. The liquid evaporated quickly, leaving surfaces clean without the sticky residue other cleaners left behind. What made it work so well also made it dangerous beyond anything the labels suggested. Carbon tetrachloride fumes attacked the liver and kidneys, and in enclosed kitchen spaces, concentrations could reach levels that caused serious harm within minutes. People bent over counters, scrubbing stains, breathing deeply without realizing they were inhaling something their bodies could not process. The symptoms mimicked flu or fatigue, easy to dismiss until the damage became undeniable. When safer alternatives emerged and regulators understood the risks, these spot removers quietly disappeared from store shelves, leaving behind only warnings and memories of cleaning that cost far more than the stains removed. BPA plastic baby bottles were the modern solution to infant feeding in the 1970s, replacing breakable glass with lightweight, durable plastic that busy parents could toss into diaper bags without worry. Families warmed formula and breast milk in these bottles, heated them in pans of water or early microwaves, and trusted that anything sold for babies must be completely safe. The plastic was made with bisphenol A, a compound that helped create the clear, shatter-resistant material parents loved. But BPA leached into liquids, especially when heated, releasing chemicals that mimicked hormones in developing bodies. Babies drank bottle after bottle of contaminated formula while their parents believed they were providing the safest nutrition possible. Researchers eventually discovered that even tiny amounts of BPA could affect development, growth, and health in ways that lasted far beyond infancy. When the findings became impossible to ignore, regulators banned BPA from baby products and manufacturers scrambled to reformulate. Those convenient plastic bottles had been slowly dosing infants with compounds their tiny bodies were never meant to absorb. Sodium hydroxide drain crystals were the brutal problem solvers that 1970s homeowners reached for whenever kitchen sinks backed up with grease and food debris. These powerful pellets promised to dissolve clogs in minutes, and they delivered with terrifying efficiency. Families poured them into standing water, watching the crystals hiss, steam, and generate heat intense enough to warp plastic pipes. The chemical reaction was violent, bubbling as it ate through whatever blocked the drain. But sodium hydroxide did not care what it dissolved. Skin, eyes, and lungs were just as vulnerable as the grease-clogging pipes. One splash during pouring, one moment of carelessness, and the burns arrived instantly. Children who wandered into kitchens during drain treatments sometimes encountered fumes or residue that caused injuries requiring immediate medical attention. When safer enzymatic cleaners emerged and regulators documented the household dangers, the most concentrated formulations were pulled from consumer shelves. Those drain crystals had promised clean pipes, but delivered chemical burns to families who trusted the labels. PCB-filled fluorescent under-cabinet lights were the energy-efficient darlings of 1970s kitchen renovations, promising to illuminate countertops while saving money on electricity bills. Homeowners installed them beneath upper cabinets, admiring how the cool white glow made food preparation easier and kitchens feel more modern. Inside each fixture, the ballast contained polychlorinated biphenyls, an industrial compound that helped regulate electrical current and extend bulb life. For years, these lights hummed quietly above cutting boards without anyone questioning what was inside. But PCBs are persistent toxins that accumulate in the body, refusing to break down. When ballasts aged or cracked, they leaked oily residue onto counters where families prepared food. The contamination spread silently, absorbed through skin or tracked on hands and utensils. When researchers documented PCB dangers, regulators banned their use and demanded careful disposal of old fixtures. Those efficient little lights had been quietly leaking poison above the surfaces where families chopped vegetables and kneaded bread. DDT-based pantry moth sprays were the invisible guardians of 1970s kitchen cabinets, promising to protect flour, cereal, and dried goods from the tiny pests that could ruin an entire pantry overnight. Families sprayed them liberally on shelf paper, inside corners, and along cabinet edges where moths like to hide and lay their eggs. The product worked exactly as advertised, killing insects on contact and leaving residue that continued working for months afterward. What nobody understood was that DDT did not simply disappear after the moths were gone. It accumulated in household dust, settled into the food stored nearby, and built up in the bodies of everyone who ate from those pantries. Children absorbed it faster than adults, their developing systems storing a chemical that would remain detectable in their tissues for decades. When scientists documented how DDT accumulated through food chains and affected human health, the bans arrived with urgent clarity. Those pantry sprays had been contaminating the very food supplies they were meant to protect, leaving invisible residue on every shelf and in every corner. Radium dial kitchen timers glowed softly on 1970s countertops, their luminous numbers and hands promising to keep track of roasts, cakes, and casseroles even when the kitchen lights were dimmed. Families loved being able to glance at the timer from across the room without squinting or turning on extra lights. The gentle green glow seemed almost magical, a small piece of technology that made cooking feel more sophisticated. What nobody realized was that the glow came from radium paint, a radioactive substance that emitted constant low-level radiation into the kitchen air. These timers sat inches from food preparation areas, silently releasing particles that drifted across countertops and into the lungs of anyone nearby. Children who played in kitchens absorbed doses their parents never suspected. When researchers finally connected household radium exposure to serious health concerns, the timers were classified as radioactive hazards requiring special disposal. Those convenient glowing gadgets had been quietly irradiating the heart of the home while families stirred pots and packed lunches just inches away. Flammable aerosol cooking sprays seemed like the ultimate kitchen convenience when they first appeared in 1970s homes, promising to coat pans evenly and prevent sticking with just a quick burst from the can. Families kept them beside stovetops for easy access, reaching for them before every fried egg, grilled cheese, and sautéed vegetable. The sprays worked beautifully, creating thin layers of oil that made cleanup effortless and cooking nearly foolproof. But the propellants that pushed the oil out of the can were highly flammable, and kitchens are full of open flames and hot surfaces. One accidental spray too close to a burner, one moment of distraction while the stove was lit, and the entire stream could ignite in a fireball that traveled back toward the can. Kitchen fires started by these sprays sent families to emergency rooms with burns they never saw coming. When safety regulators demanded reformulated propellants and warning labels, the old cans quietly disappeared. Those convenient sprays had turned ordinary stovetops into potential fire hazards, hiding in plain sight beside the salt and pepper. Tile countertops used to be the envy of every stylish post-war kitchen. Bright turquoise, sunny yellow, or soft pink ceramic tiles lined the counters like a checkerboard of domestic optimism. But the secret every home cook knew was this: those grout lines were a menace. They absorbed spills, caught crumbs, and stained faster than you could scrub. You might as well have been cooking on a tiled floor. Still, people loved the look. It felt cheerful, polished, and clean, at least at first glance. The tiles were cool to the touch and easy to replace if one chipped. You wiped them down after every meal, but somehow they still told the story of every spill and every stir. Those stains were not just grime, they were memories set in stone. But no matter how often you scrubbed with baking soda and vinegar, the grout lines always seemed a shade darker than the day before. Eventually, the shine wore off. Laminate, granite, and seamless solid surfaces took over. You could wipe once and be done. No more grout brushes, no more bleach, but something about those tile counters still lingers in the memory. They were imperfect, yes, but also warm and lived in. Kitchens where birthday cakes were frosted and Sunday gravy simmered for hours. When did spotless surfaces become more important than stories? Back in the days when phones had cords and privacy was a privilege, every hallway had a throne, and it was called the gossip bench. This was not just a chair. It was a hybrid masterpiece, a small wooden seat attached to a side table, designed specifically for long, dramatic phone calls. These benches were often placed right by the hallway phone nook, and if you were a teenager in the 1960s or 1970s, this was your favorite spot in the house. You would sit there for hours, twirling the phone cord, whispering about crushes, repeating, "No, you hang up," while your siblings paced in the background waiting for their turn. Some benches had a little drawer for pens and paper. Others had cushions and floral fabric, showing just how serious folks were about comfort during those marathon chats. It was furniture that served one purpose: conversation. But as phones got smaller, and then wireless, and then fit in your pocket, the gossip bench faded away. Today, they are vintage novelties. Back then, they were the nerve center of the household. And while you chatted away about school dances or new neighbors, something else might have been happening overhead. Quietly, from the ceiling, playing your favorite song. Imagine this. It is Sunday morning. You are eating breakfast, and faintly from above your head comes the sweet hum of big band music or the evening news. Bread drawers with roll-top covers were the finishing touch of a vintage kitchen. Built into cabinets, they kept loaves tucked away neatly, shielded from pests and staleness. The roll-top design made opening and closing them oddly satisfying. Families saw them as a mark of a well-equipped modern kitchen. But over time, bread drawers became unnecessary. Moms loved the way they hid clutter, slipping in not just bread but crackers, cookies, and even lunchbox snacks. Kids loved sliding the cover up and down just for the sound, pretending it was a secret hiding place. Some drawers got stuffed so full that the roll top barely closed, creaking under the pressure of too many loaves. Over time, the covers warped, and crumbs always seemed to collect in the corners no matter how often they were cleaned. Still, they gave kitchens a sense of order, a place where even bread had its own home. Packaged bread lasted longer, freezers took over storage, and counter space became more valuable. Today, bread drawers are rare curiosities, a reminder of a time when every kitchen detail was designed with purpose, even if that purpose eventually disappeared. Jell-O molds were not just recipes, they were performances. In the 1950s and 1960s, these shimmering towers of gelatin were the pride of dinner tables and potlucks alike. Suspended inside were slices of fruit, vegetables, nuts, and sometimes even meats, frozen in mid-dance by the wobble of lemon or lime gelatin. The molds themselves were often metal, shaped like flowers, domes, or decorative rings. Housewives practiced their releases with reverence, praying the mold would slide out cleanly with a satisfying thwack. The result? A glossy, surreal centerpiece. Guests gasped, children poked. Recipes were passed from neighbor to neighbor, each claiming their version was best. But these creations were not just about looks. Jell-O was cheap, shelf-stable, and forgiving. It let families stretch their ingredients during lean times. It made leftovers glamorous, and it brought a little joy to a time when people needed something bright and strange and wonderful. Eventually, tastes changed. Molds disappeared into cabinets. Jell-O became a snack cup. But for decades, it was art, it was pride, and it was love in a ring-shaped dish. When did we stop celebrating the food that made us smile before it ever touched our lips? Ice crushers attached to counters made kitchens feel like soda fountains. Clamp the gadget to the edge of a table or counter, pour in cubes from those old metal trays, and crank away. Out came crushed ice, perfect for lemonades, cocktails, or the occasional snow cone on a hot summer afternoon. The whole family gathered around, waiting for the sound of crunching cubes to turn into the fluffy pile of crushed ice. Kids begged for it just to chew on, even when their teeth hurt from the cold. The crusher turned ordinary drinks into something special, whether it was cola poured over ice or a backyard mocktail for mom and dad. Of course, they were messy, noisy, and required elbow grease. Ice flew everywhere, and the little drawer often overflowed. But they were worth it, because in a world without refrigerators that crushed ice automatically, this was as close as you got to fancy. By the time automatic ice dispensers arrived in the 80s, the clamp-on crusher was already a relic. But its memory is tied forever to kitchens that turned the everyday act of crushing ice into family entertainment. We need to talk about the elephant, or maybe the shag, in the room. Carpeted bathrooms. Yes, wall-to-wall carpeting in the bathroom. Someone, somewhere, decided that stepping out of the shower onto tile was just too cold. So instead, they gave us plush floors that soaked up everything. These bathroom carpets matched the walls, the sink, the curtains. You had mint green bathrooms with mint green rugs from tub to toilet, pink bathrooms with matching fuzzy toilet seat covers and floor mats. It was peak comfort meets catastrophe. Over time, those comfy carpets turned into breeding grounds for mold, mildew, and mystery smells. Still, you have to give it credit for ambition. For a few decades, the bathroom was not just a place to get clean, it was a fully furnished retreat. These days, waterproof vinyl and ceramic tiles have reclaimed their throne. But every now and then, you stumble upon an old house with a powder blue plush floor and wonder what it was like to live so fearlessly. Now, if that made you raise an eyebrow, wait until you hear about the toilet paper holders. That could sing. A countertop garbage chute might sound like science fiction, but it was once the definition of practical design. Picture this: a hinged square in the middle of your kitchen counter that popped open to reveal a direct drop into the trash bin below. You could chop carrots, peel potatoes, and then sweep the scraps in one motion. No fiddling with a trash can lid, no extra step. Just a quick flick of the wrist, and it was gone. In mid-century kitchens, these were genius, especially when you were making big meals and needed all the counter space you could get. It made cleanup feel like part of the flow, not an afterthought. One swift motion and the mess was gone before it had time to become a problem. But eventually, people began to worry about smells, pests, and hygiene. Builders stopped including the feature, and home cooks grew wary of having an open hole in the counter, even if it had a lid. Most of them were sealed shut or removed entirely during remodels. Today, you will only find them in untouched kitchens from the 1940s or 1950s. They are almost always covered in laminate or chrome trim, like a forgotten piece of spaceship tech. What other clever shortcuts have we erased without even realizing it? Faux brick or stone backsplashes were another strange fad. Made of plastic or thin panels, they promised the look of rustic brick at a fraction of the cost. Families eager to copy the country kitchen style of the 60s installed them by the millions. The result? A wall that looked real from a distance, but up close felt like flimsy plastic. Still, the idea caught on. They were easy enough for dads to install on a weekend, and suddenly every home had its own rustic charm. But over time, they peeled, warped, and sometimes even smelled strange, especially near the stove. Magazines praised them as stylish, affordable, and easy to install. For kids, they were just another backdrop to family meals, unnoticed until the panels began to crack or warp. Today, faux brick is often mocked, but back then, it was an attempt to bring warmth and character into kitchens on a budget. The electric egg poacher was the quiet champion of a better breakfast. Small, unassuming, and often overlooked, it sat tucked away in the corners of countertops, promising soft whites and warm yolks without a pot or pan in sight. You filled the base with water, cracked your eggs into the holders, and watched the steam rise slowly into a gentle cloud. It was perfect for those who wanted elegance without the effort. No vinegar, no swirling water, no chance of a ruined yolk. Just press the button and walk away. In a world full of toasters and coffee makers, it whispered, "Take your time." It belonged to the kind of home that played soft jazz on Sunday mornings and served breakfast on ceramic plates instead of paper towels. The poacher did not need to be flashy. It was consistent. It gave people back their mornings. And yet, it faded. Because poached eggs stopped being everyday meals. Because we forgot how nice it was to feel fancy before 9 in the morning. Now, most sit in thrift shops, unused and unappreciated. But for those who remember, one bite of that perfectly poached egg takes them straight back. When did we decide breakfast was no longer worth slowing down for? It looked like a cabinet, just a little rectangle in the wall with a tiny knob. But open it up and suddenly you had an ironing board swinging down like a Murphy bed for your clothes. Fold-out ironing boards in the wall were the peak of space-saving genius. These things were especially popular in mid-century homes, when every inch of space had to count. The board folded out flat, usually right next to the laundry area or inside the kitchen pantry. You did not have to drag a heavy metal contraption from the closet. Just pop it open, plug in the iron, and get to work. Some even had a tiny shelf or built-in plug to hold the iron itself, along with a little light above the board. Now that was fancy. Housewives adored these because they made chores quicker. And let's face it, they just looked slick. Like the house was in on the secret with you. Eventually, though, as trends moved toward larger laundry rooms and portable everything, these ironing stations disappeared. But for the folks who grew up with one, there is a real nostalgia there. It was like opening a secret door into domestic life. Now, speaking of secret doors, the next one was not about cleaning your shirt. It was about making sure your closet smelled like the forest. The electric hot plate built into the countertop was not meant to replace the stove. It was there for the in-between moments, the simmering, the reheating, the lonely cup of soup on a gray afternoon. It looked like a single stovetop coil embedded right into the counter, usually near the sink or beside the coffee station. You turned the knob and it glowed red. No pots stacked on burners, no full stove required. For single servings or quick boils, it was perfect. They became especially popular in the 1950s and 1960s during the height of the modern kitchen boom. They were sleek, functional, and felt futuristic. But they came with risks. Open coils got hot fast, stayed hot longer, and were sometimes forgotten. Over time, homeowners chose to have more counter space instead. The coils vanished, replaced with cutting boards and clean surfaces. But those hot plates once stood for independence, the idea that a small meal still mattered, that a house could be big, but one burner could still feel like home. What part of the kitchen did we lose when we made everything smooth? It is one of those things you barely notice until it slides into action. Pocket doors. Unlike the typical swinging door, pocket doors vanish into the wall when opened, like a magic trick you can walk through. They were the height of clever home design in the mid-20th century, especially in homes that wanted a clean, modern look without bulky doors breaking up the space. You would find them separating dining rooms from kitchens or closing off formal living rooms when company arrived. Over time, though, they became a pain. The tracks jammed, the rollers squeaked, and once one went off its rail, good luck fixing it without tearing open the wall. Slowly, builders turned back to swing doors, and pocket doors became a quirky throwback. But if those walls could talk, they would whisper about family dinners, polite goodbyes, and the satisfaction of sliding a whole room out of sight. Now, speaking of questionable style choices, wait until we step into the softest, strangest room in the house, the bathroom. Hideaway bread boxes were once the secret storage of the kitchen. Instead of the wicker baskets or countertop bins we see today, these boxes were cleverly built right into the counters, hidden under a sliding panel, or disguised as part of the cabinetry. Moms would pull open the section, and inside were loaves of white sandwich bread, dinner rolls, or maybe a few sweet buns saved from the bakery. The idea was simple. Bread stayed fresher, out of sight, and away from curious hands. But there was also a touch of pride in having such a sleek, modern feature built right into the kitchen. Bread boxes became part of the ritual of mealtime. Kids would wait as mom reached into the hidden drawer, pulling out slices for sandwiches or toast. Some even had faint, yeasty smells clinging to them, proof that bread was the true staple of the family table. Of course, bread eventually came sealed tighter, baked to last longer, and stored more easily in pantries or freezers. That meant the hideaway box slowly lost its purpose. Today, you almost never see them, but for anyone who grew up with one, the memory of opening that secret compartment for a slice of bread is still fresh. The Philco Predicta television looked like it belonged in a spaceship, not a living room. Its bold design, featuring a separate swivel screen perched atop a futuristic base, turned heads the moment it arrived in 1958. This was not just a television. This was the future. The Predicta came in a range of pastel colors, with names like Holiday and Pedestal. It was slim, sleek, and shockingly modern in a time when televisions still looked like wooden trunks. For the first time, you could turn the screen without moving the entire cabinet. It was clever, it was playful, it made you feel like tomorrow had already arrived. But the beauty came at a price. Technicians hated servicing it. Components wore out quickly. Still, families loved it. They gathered around it, cross-legged on shag rugs, watching black and white broadcasts with wide eyes. It made television magical. Not background noise, not distraction. Magic. But magic is fragile. And soon, newer sets with fewer quirks replaced it. The Predicta faded into memory, too strange for the mainstream, too delicate for time. Now it lives in vintage stores and collectors' basements, quietly glowing with nostalgia. How did the most visionary television of its era become a footnote in history? Imagine opening your cabinet to plan dinner and seeing a chalkboard right on the inside of the door. Some even had pull-down recipe scrolls made of parchment or linen, mounted like an old-fashioned map. You could write a grocery list, the day's menu, or a reminder that your mother-in-law was coming over. These weren't just novelty features. They were part of how a kitchen thought out loud. In a time before smartphones or sticky notes, these were the planners, the notepads, the command centers of the kitchen, and they told a story. In chalk dust and grease smudges, you could see a family's week unfold. Sometimes the writing faded, but the memory of it never did. It was handwriting that knew your routines better than you did. Eventually, they faded out. Whiteboards came in, then apps, then voice memos. Cupboards no longer had messages waiting. Now, kitchens are silent and glossy, all smooth wood and cold steel. No one scribbles meatloaf tonight inside a drawer anymore. The charm is gone, and so is the handwriting. But in old kitchens, those chalk smears still whisper what once was. When did we stop writing things down where it mattered most? Before there were curling wands, flat irons, and hair straighteners with 10 settings, there was one holy grail of home beauty, the built-in hairdryer chair. That is right, just like the ones at the salon. These were dome-shaped dryers, fixed right into vanities or dressing tables, and they were everything. Sit down, flip a switch, and suddenly your head was enveloped in a low hum of warm air. These machines were especially popular in the 1950s and 1960s when hairstyles like the beehive or the bouffant required serious volume and serious time. The dryers were sleek, futuristic, and a little noisy, but they got the job done. Housewives would sit under them while flipping through magazines, sipping coffee, or catching up on the neighborhood gossip. Some units were even foldable, tucking away neatly when not in use. Today, we think of beauty appliances as portable and handheld. But back then, hair care was an event, and the home adapted accordingly. These built-in dryer chairs turned the average bathroom into a personal beauty parlor. Sadly, they went the way of Aquanet and home perms. But speaking of gossip, let us head into the hallway because the next stop is where stories were shared, secrets were spilled, and teenage hearts skipped a beat. The Teasmade was not just a novelty. It was a revolution in how mornings began. A combination alarm clock and tea maker, it became a fixture in British bedrooms and a curious but beloved import in mid-century American homes. Imagine waking to the gentle hiss of boiling water, the soft clink of porcelain, and the smell of fresh brewed tea wafting through the air before your feet ever touched the floor. The Teasmade delivered this magic through simple but elegant engineering. A timer triggered the kettle. A mechanical arm poured the boiling water into a waiting teacup. No fumbling in the kitchen, no slamming drawers, just warmth and calm. Some models even included a gentle nightlight, glowing softly on your bedside table like a companion. It turned mornings into rituals. But rituals are easy to break. Coffee took over. Digital clocks became the norm. And the quiet grace of the Teasmade was forgotten. Now it exists mostly in memories and dusty attics. But for those who used one, the association is immediate. Peace, intention. A morning that cared for you instead of demanded something from you. When did we trade thoughtful awakenings for jarring alarms and paper cups? Wall-mounted can openers were a fixture of every mid-century kitchen. Screwed permanently into the wall, usually right next to the fridge or the counter, they were designed so no one would ever misplace them. And they worked. Every family had stacks of canned goods, soup, beans, peaches, vegetables, and those cans were cracked open daily with the clunky metal opener hanging from the wall. Kids learned quickly how to slot the can in and crank it around, listening to the satisfying click as the lid lifted off. They were reliable, always ready, and always visible. But they were not without their quirks. Sometimes the blades dulled, sometimes they sprayed juice when punctured, and sometimes they left sharp edges that cut little fingers. Still, they were dependable, and for decades, no kitchen felt complete without one. Eventually, countertop openers and compact handheld models pushed them out. But for a long stretch of time, that mounted opener was a symbol of kitchen permanence. Practical, heavy-duty, and always hanging right where you needed it. If your grandmother had a nutmeg grater drawer, you already know this was not about convenience. It was about pride. Tucked away like a secret compartment, this tiny wooden drawer usually had a built-in metal grater inside, fixed to the bottom or back wall. You would slide it open, pop in a whole nutmeg, and grate just enough to finish your pumpkin pie or rice pudding. It was oddly luxurious for such a tiny task. People swore that freshly grated nutmeg was leagues above the powdered kind from the store. And in kitchens that ran on rituals, this mattered. Nutmeg had a smell that meant something. Holidays, Sundays, a warm drink on a cold evening. It was the finishing touch, the kind of detail that showed you cared about flavor, not just filling bellies. One twist of that drawer and the kitchen felt instantly more personal. But as time went on, spice blends got pre-mixed, and the greater drawer seemed too specific for modern use. Most disappeared when newer cabinets came in. The metal rusted, the drawer warped, and eventually it was either nailed shut or tossed out with the old silverware. But once, it was a mark of a thoughtful kitchen, one where flavors came from effort, not a jar. Next time you taste store-bought eggnog, ask yourself, what tiny traditions did we leave behind? It was the original shortcut for busy kitchens, long before microwaves or DoorDash deliveries. Right there in the wall, usually between the kitchen and dining room, was a little opening known as a pass-through window. Not big enough to walk through, just big enough to pass a steaming pot of mashed potatoes or a stack of plates. It was part convenience, part conversation starter, and part dinner-time drama stage. You could poke your head through and call out, "Who wants seconds?" Or you could slide a dish over without juggling it across the carpet. In bigger homes, they were framed out in wood or tile with little ledges to rest a casserole on. In smaller homes, they were purely functional, a hole in the wall that saved mom 10 steps at every meal. Some even had shutters or swinging doors, so you could close the kitchen once dinner was served. But eventually, open-concept living took over. People tore down the wall entirely instead of carving a window into it. And just like that, the pass-through became passé. Still, it had its charm. It turned dinner into a kind of performance. But if passing potatoes through a hole in the wall sounds odd, imagine burning your garbage in a machine tucked right next to the toilet. Pull-out cutting boards were another once common feature. Built directly into kitchen cabinetry, these wooden slabs slid out like drawers. They saved counter space and provided a dedicated spot for chopping vegetables or slicing bread. But they came with problems. They absorbed smells, warped with moisture, and stained permanently with every onion or tomato. Some boards became so seasoned with marks and stains that they told a family's entire cooking history. Kids rolled out cookie dough on them, pounding cookie cutters until the wood was scarred with little circles. Dads used them for carving roasts, leaving behind knife grooves and grease stains. The boards often squeaked when pulled out, a familiar sound in every household. Even though they were flawed, they gave kitchens a sense of resourcefulness and tradition. Yet, for families with small kitchens, they were a lifesaver. Kids often remembered rolling out cookie dough on those boards, flour dusting the wood as holiday baking took over the room. Today, the pull-out cutting board has all but vanished, but its memory remains in kitchens that valued function above all else. The cookie press was a piece of holiday magic that turned dough into art with nothing but a squeeze. With its interchangeable metal discs and ratchet-style handle, it could create dozens of perfect cookies in seconds, each one shaped like a flower, star, or tree. It was especially popular during the holiday season, when kitchens smelled of cinnamon and vanilla, and the radio played old Christmas tunes. The press made baking feel like a celebration. Kids would fight over who got to press the dough, and every batch felt like a tiny miracle. No rolling pin, no cookie cutter. Just one graceful push, and a perfect cookie appeared. The dough was usually soft and buttery, flavored with almond or lemon, and finished with a dusting of sugar or colored sprinkles. The cookie press was about more than efficiency. It was about beauty. It said your cookies could be delicious and delightful, but as store-bought cookies became more common, and as baking turned into a rare weekend chore instead of a family tradition, the press went quiet. It sits in the backs of drawers now, its discs scattered and forgotten. But for those who remember, it was a joy machine. When did we stop making food that felt like play? You would toss it in and forget about it. That was the beauty of the laundry chute. A small hatch built right into the hallway wall or bathroom cabinet, leading straight down into a hamper, or sometimes directly into the basement laundry room. Just open, drop, and go. These vertical passageways were like magic portals for dirty socks and sweaty gym clothes. No more lugging baskets down 2 flights, no more arguments about whose turn it was. You just lifted the flap and let gravity do the work. Kids treated them like secret tunnels. Parents treated them like a godsend. But like many good things, laundry chutes eventually went out of style. Safety concerns popped up, especially with young kids and pets. And then there was the fire risk, as an open shaft could let smoke and flames move between floors. Add in the rise of compact laundry machines on upper levels, and suddenly the chute became obsolete. But admit it, there is still something satisfying about the idea of chucking a shirt through the wall. And speaking of walls, wait until you hear about the windows that were not exactly windows. Behind the smooth cabinet doors of many mid-century kitchens hid a surprising tool, a pull-out dish drainer that lived inside the wall. After washing dishes, you would slide out the rack, load it up, and let everything drip dry behind closed doors. It kept counters clear, made the kitchen look tidy, and gave a sense of order that matched the rest of the house. Some even had small trays underneath to catch the water. It was not about hiding the mess, it was about making space feel peaceful. When plastic racks and countertop drainers became standard, these hidden drying systems quietly disappeared. New kitchens no longer had room for them, and they were hard to clean and prone to mold. But there was something thoughtful about them, something neat, something kind of charming. Now, we just pile dishes in the sink or leave them out for hours. The idea of drying dishes out of sight feels like something from a different era, one where appearances mattered, but so did small comforts. What else have we stopped tucking away for the sake of convenience? If any of these banned kitchen gadgets stirred a memory or a shiver, share your story in the comments. Tap like to help others discover these forgotten dangers, and subscribe so you never miss the next journey into history hiding in plain sight.